Hello everyone, my name is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and I'm about to share with you my life. It's not the best life, but it's quite interesting. So, this is my life. It all started on January 30th, 1882 in Hyde Park, New York, where Mama San Ann Delano Roosevelt gave birth to me. Papa James Roosevelt I was a businessman who made money off of railroads, so I was lucky to be born into a wealthy family. I lived in Springwood, New York State. When I was little, I was privileged. Some may say I was a spoiled brat. Actually, everyone said I was a spoiled brat. Although I always had maids surrounding me, I was lonely since I was the only child. Actually, I had a half-brother, but he is half dead to me. He was the same age as my mother. For all I know, he's old enough to be my father. Anyways, people put me on a pedestal. My parents set unrealistic expectations for me, which is why I was educated by tutors and governesses until age 14. While I received a high level of education, my studies interfered with my social life. In other words, I was a loser. My parents, obsessed with my future success, taught me that I had to rely on myself in order to make it to the top. In 1896, I went to Groton School for Boys, which was an elite Episcopal prep school in Massachusetts. I still didn't have friends. The other boys were really athletic, but I was not. Screw them. I had friends, but they were adults. They were the ones who noticed me. Bearing the last name Roosevelt was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, being related to a former president of the United States came with many perks. It served as a great conversation starter, especially with the ladies. However, sharing the same name with such a successful man was also a burden. I felt like I was living in his shadow. So in 1900, I moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts to attend Harvard College. While people expected me to succeed because I went to such a prestigious school, I still got straight C's. Anyways, at Harvard, I met this girl. Her name was Eleanor. She was great. The only problem was, she was my cousin. Now before you get all judgy, she was my fifth cousin, once removed, so technically, it's allowed. Because love is love, and it has no boundaries. Shout out to Teddy for letting me marry your niece. You the real MVP. After I graduated Harvard, I went to Columbia University Law School. I know, boring, right? I passed the bar exam. I was living the upper class life as a typical white privileged male. But law was so boring, I couldn't do much, which is why I dropped out and turned my head towards politics instead. In 1913, I was elected to the New York State Senate. People started to know me through being a state senator. I got political experience and met Louis Howe, who influenced me in my political career. I was re-elected and passed many bills and programs for agriculture. While I had successes in politics, my personal life was filled with controversies. I had an affair in 1914. It's no big deal. There was this girl named Lucy Mercer. I knew her through my wife Eleanor. She was her social secretary. In 1916, Eleanor and the kids went to Campobello Island on a vacation. Sadly, I had to stay behind for work in Washington, D.C. I was really lonely in D.C. I know it was wrong, but I began to see Lucy secretly. I admit that I was easily tempted, but what kind of man isn't? Later, Eleanor fired Lucy for no reason, but Lucy then enlisted in the U.S. Navy, and as the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, she happened to be assigned to my office, so we were able to see each other. It went on for a while, without Eleanor suspecting anything. We sent letters to each other too. However, after a trip to Europe, I got pneumonia, and Eleanor found those secret letters. She flipped tables when she realized that I was seeing her old secretary. She threatened me, saying things like, "You'd better not do that again, or else I'll file for a divorce." My mom threatened to disown me if I got a divorce, since it might have ruined my political career. So, I stayed with Eleanor, but she became more distant and focused more on her political and social career. Lucy and I still saw each other. On January 6, 1919, my cousin Teddy Roosevelt passed away. He influenced me in a way that I will never forget. I looked up to him, I admired him, and he was gone. His presidency was one of the greatest, initiating the nation's transition towards progressivism. He served as a role model for my political platform. I will always remember you, Teddy. I promise to continue on with your legacy. Teddy's death fueled my drive to succeed. I ran as a Democratic candidate for vice president in 1920. Alongside James M. Cox, and we lost to the Republicans. Of all people we could lose to, We lost to Warren Harding and his vice president, Calvin Coolidge. This was an extremely low point in my life. Losing the election of 1920 diminished my confidence. I began to question my ability to lead, doubting myself. There came a point where I considered dropping out of politics altogether. To clear my head, during the summer of 1921, I went to my family's cottage in Campobello Island in New Brunswick, Canada. Then, something tragic happened. I was sailing on my yacht when I accidentally fell overboard into the Bay of Fundy, whose waters was extremely cold. Although I was rescued and brought back onto the yacht with minimal injuries, the next day I began to feel pain in my lower back. As time passed, I lost feelings in my legs, and by the third day, I grew so weak that I couldn't even stand up. Although Eleanor called countless doctors, they could not diagnose me or find a cure. One doctor, Dr. King, claimed that I had a blood clot on my spinal cord. However, several days later, he contacted me saying that he misdiagnosed me. My pain had been caused by spinal lesion. While I was given massages to help ease my pain, they did not cure my paralysis. I continued to suffer until August 25, 1921, when Dr. Robert Lovett accurately diagnosed me with infantile paralysis, otherwise known as polio. Eleanor and I were shocked, as polio most commonly affects children. However, the doctor explained that the stress of my political affairs had weakened my immune system. This incident, along with my defeat during the election of 1920, caused me to re-evaluate my decision to pursue politics. This was undoubtedly the darkest point of my life. I began to worry that politics was taking a toll on my life and that I had to abandon my goals before my condition worsened from the stress. But then I was reminded of all of the hard work I put into my career. I was reminded of all the people in my life who put me down, saying that I would never live up to the expectations that my family and Teddy had set for me. Then I thought of Teddy, the figure I had looked up to for a large portion of my life. I realized that while he may have faced obstacles, he never gave up himself. Yeah, I've had a few rough patches, but I see the good in everything. From losing the election of 1920 and being diagnosed with polio, it can't get any worse than this. It will only get better from here. Today is October 28, 1929, and tomorrow will be another day. If you liked my video, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe. If you want to watch my previous video, click on the box to the right. Once again, my name is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and I'll see you all next week. The stock market crashed the next day on October 29, 1929, also known as Black Tuesday. As people began to lose their investments and savings, the decline of consumer goods and high unemployment devastated the nation. The president at the time, Herbert Hoover, believed in a trickle-down ideology but failed to address the needs of the public. As a result, FDR was able to rise to presidency, providing direct government handouts to the forgotten man through a series of programs and reforms known as the New Deal. However, his policies were not enough to bring the nation out of the Depression. The unemployment rate remained high and the national debt doubled to $40 billion, causing many people to criticize FDR's method. Unemployment was not fixed until the outbreak of World War II, which traumatized the nation, resulting in over 400,000 American deaths. The stress of the war damaged FDR's health, leading to atherosclerosis, coronary artery disease, and congestive heart failure, until he passed away from a cerebral hemorrhage in Warm Spring, Georgia, on April 12, 1945.